I'd like to go ahead and call to order the Temple City Council regular meeting for December 17th. If I can get a roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann?
Here.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Here.
Councilmember Yu?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Here.
Mayor Fish?
Here. Okay, I have, first we're going to start off with our invocation from Mr. Jim Walden from First Baptist Church, which is located at 6019 Baldwin Avenue. And then afterwards, we are going to have our Pledge of Allegiance done by Troop 161. Scout Duncan Viora will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Scouts presenting the flags will be Joshua Sue and Daniel Sue. Troop 161 will be having an urban campout on Colorado Boulevard on December 31st. How fun. They will also have 3 Eagles, I'm assuming Eagle Scouts, representing Temple City on January 1st, 2020, as banner carriers in the Rose Parade. Oh, wow. Anthony Hahn, Spencer Chang, and Cameron Wong. So if everybody will please stand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Would you pray with me? Father, what a great season of joy. Indeed, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, because you have been so good to us. And with joy, I stand here tonight thanking you for the privilege to be a part of Temple City and what you are doing here, and for this council of these fine people who with joy give it their lives to serve and govern and lead. We ask for their blessing, their protection, their wisdom, that we would work together, that indeed there be peace on earth. Because Jesus, you love us so much. Thank you for this time. Bless this evening with your presence. In your holy name, we all say, amen. Amen.
Color guard, attention. Color guard, front and center. Forward march. Hold. Please place the flag for the United States of America. Please post the California state flag. All those in uniform and veterans, please salute. All others, please place your right hand over your heart. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, reform. Color guard, retreat. Halt. The audience may now be seated. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we're going to start off with our ceremonial matters. First of all, we have special recognition of Mr. John Petrillo. Mr. Petrillo's business has been in Temple City for 60 years, Mama Petrillo's. Mama Petrillo's was established in 1961 by Angelo Petrillo and his wife Jean. The couple worked until 1982, when they retired and turned over the reins to their eldest son, John Petrillo. Tonight, we would like to recognize John Petrillo for his contributions and service to the community. John, if you could please come up. We have a certificate for you. If the council would please help me present this. presented on the behalf of the citizens of Temple City to John Petrillo in recognition of your 58 years of operating a business in the city of Temple City. We thank you for your many years of service and for being a valuable member of our business community. Thank you very much, John. And I think we're going to come get a picture. If the rest of the council would like to come.
Okay, Marcia, come on up, please.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Did you want to say, are we saying something now or not?
If you would like to say
Well,
something.
wait till it gets back.
Okay. We're going to get a picture of all of you, please.
I think all the nice, pretty. You guys sit in the front.
You guys are in the
Yeah, you guys in the front.
We're small.
No, you're the important one.
You're around top people.
Yes, yes. All right.
We're back.
We go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Got it. Thank you.
So, is it okay if,
Yes, I know our council
Thank you.
wanted to make some comments.
just a
about-
few brief comments, John and I, we go back a long ways to Little League days, don't we? We didn't always get along back then, though, because we were in different leagues. We had that rivalry going, though, but at the end of the day, everybody got along, and, I miss those days, as I'm sure you do as well. I think one of the things that I will remember, of course, and that is, and one of the things I think that how Mama Petrillo's will be remembered in the city is that you were part of our first mural, if you remember. And that's going to be up somewhere in Temple City forever. And so you'll always be a part of Temple City no matter when and where. And so that's very important. And I want to thank you for all you've done throughout the years and all you've done for the city. Still one of the best pizzas I've ever had, of course, that pepperoni and sausage, hard to beat. But, I wish you and your family, of course, all the best. And I know you're going to go into the next chapter of your life and do very well, so enjoy it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Did anyone else want to make any comments? I just wanted to say I've been in Temple City for 35 years, and my husband was actually born and raised in Temple City. And when he brought me here, when we first got married, the very first place we went to was Petrillo's Pizza, because he said, if you live in Temple City, you have to eat at this place, and you have to just know that this is the best restaurant in Temple City. That was back in '84. I'm dating myself. That was back in '84, but I've been going there ever since. And like I said, it's been a big part of my life. Of course, I raised my children here, and for them to go to Petrillo's was also always a huge deal, especially at the beginning of our marriage, where we had very little money. Every 2 weeks, we could put some money together, go buy a pizza, and it was just, that's what you did. And I know a lot of other people in Temple City, that's what they did also. They went to Mama Petrillo's. So I just want to thank you. And again, best pizza in town. So we're going to miss you. We're going to really miss you. So thank you.
Thank you. John, come over here.
Come up to the
Come over here so we can hear you. We want you on TV.
Sure.
You're not shy about that, are you?
Not
I
at
didn't think
all.
so.
Not at all. No, I'd just like to say that I'd like to thank everybody for tonight, number one. Number two, I wish my mother and father were here. They're not.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes. That's life, and that's the progression of life. This community, to me, as far as I'm concerned, when my dad moved here back in 1961, he opened up the restaurant. Beautiful, beautiful community. I say to a lot of people, when we first moved here, you did not have to leave Temple City for anything. Anything you needed was in this town. You had Stoppel's Men's Store, you had Lieberg's, the 5 and Dime, we had the hardware store, Guns and Sporting Goods. We had two of the nicest restaurants in town, which was the Hunter's Inn, which is where Ralph's is now. It used to be a little small bowling alley over there as well. And on the very corner, on the northwest corner, there was the Black Watch Restaurant. We had two of the finest restaurants in the San Gabriel Valley in this little town. And what happened was, the Santa Anita Mall opened up.
Yeah.
And that was it. And everything was such a big deal because it was all under one roof, you know, and it was the big thing back in those days. We served a lot of pizzas. We've served a lot of people. We've had a lot of engagements, a lot of first dates, a lot of marriage proposals there. And we've even had people come in there to get the dressing because their gynecologist said, listen, you got to have the dressing and you'll deliver tomorrow. And a lot of people did deliver the next day, you know. So it was a
But
nice.
you know, it's funny you mentioned that because, you know Tom O'Leary, of course.
Sure.
He told me that Bonnie went in there and bought a bunch of dressing before you closed.
Oh, yeah.
She loves your dressing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, we've been very, very fortunate, you know, I say this to a lot of people. You know, I don't take a lot of credit for it because, you know, my dad was the one that started all this back in '61. He the one that launched the ship, and basically that's all I've done is basically steered it the last, you know, 26, 27 years. The city itself has been a very, very good community. It's a quality community. The one thing I gotta say, we live in Glendora. We've been there for 21 years. And my wife and I always say this. It's not like the streets of Temple City because the streets of Temple City, and I mean literally the streets of Temple City, are so well maintained, and we're always hitting potholes and stuff out there in Glendora. You
That's
know?
good to hear.
And it's
Thank you,
and
that's
it's
really
crazy.
good to hear.
It's
Yeah, we like
crazy.
that.
But you guys really do a hell of a job as far as maintaining the city and stuff and taking care of a lot of different things. So I want to thank you all very, very much for this honor tonight. I know my parents are very, very proud. It's amazing how busy we've been the last 7-8 weeks.
Oh, I'm sure.
We have done more business in the last 7-8 weeks, I think, than we've ever done in the history of Mama Petrillo's. We have just been overwhelmed, actually. And so many people have come by and wished us well, and a lot of them had grown up on my parents' food when my parents were alive, and a lot of them, when we first opened up Temple City High School after every game, all the kids used to come over to Mama Petrillo's to have, you know, their pizza, you know, and all that. And it was a very, very nice staple in the community.
Yes.
And we were very well respected, and we were very fortunate for that reason. And thankfully, we never had any problems that I know of where the sheriff's department had to come and straighten out anything because we didn't have any of those types of issues. The one thing I will say, I'll leave you this one parting note. The city now is predominantly a lot of Asian people, but the uniqueness about Asian people is this. If they like you, they tell everybody. If they don't like you, they tell everybody. And fortunately, we've been well received, well liked, and it's been an honor working with those people, and we've had so many good people come in over the years. Our business has changed over the years like so many other businesses have in the area and throughout the area and throughout the San Gabriel Valley, actually. But I can't thank you enough. My parents thank you, and we're going on, like Tom said, to a brand-new chapter. And if any of you all have time between now and the 31st, come on in and see us, and Marshall will take care of you, and we'll be all set. And if you need to take home some dressing, we'll make sure you get that too.
Okay.
So thank you very, very much for everything.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
Thank
John.
you, John.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open public comments on items not listed on the agenda. I wanted to introduce our Senator Susan Rubio. Did you want to say a few words before we start our? Okay,
If I may, please.
of
Thank you.
course.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and Council.
Good evening, Senator.
It is really amazing to be here. I've been trying to get here. As you know, I live mostly in Sacramento during your council meetings, but happy to be here to say happy holidays to everyone in person and just be able to connect. It's been a really exciting year, and I'm really quite grateful because, you know, I've been here for so many events during the lunar year. I think it was other events, and it's truly a great community, and I'm able to have such a great relationship with the city, and I really appreciate it, and thankful for the work that I was able to do on your behalf. I wanted to just share with our residents and community, I was able to secure $5.6 million for homelessness here in the San Gabriel Valley. as well pass a bill that would allow us to create a housing trust to work collaboratively with other communities to ensure that we try and deal with the housing crisis. But, more importantly, I wanted to help in any way I could, and I was able to pass a bill on behalf of Temple City to ensure that you're able to use funding to beautify your community in different ways. So thank you for having me here. Thank you for being really generous and inviting me to events, and I'm always happy to be here, and my office is always here, ready to serve you, the community, whenever you need it. And thank you, and have a happy Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and I hope to do a lot more next year. So I'll be coming to you so you can give me anything that we can help you again this year, and happy to do that for you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
We actually have something for you because you have been such a great friend to our community. So I would like our city council to come up in front.
Hey, how exciting. And Mr. John, while they're coming up here, I think he left. I wanted to just congratulate him on his business as well. I didn't get a chance to, but I will in the near future. My staff and I were talking about stopping by on the way, when we leave. Yes, we will.
You'll have to go eat there.
Thank you. Where do you want me
So,
here?
guys, I'm going to have you up there with all of everyone, and we're going to, I just want to read just really quick little thing. Senator Rubio, all of you. Senator Rubio represents the 22nd District in the San Gabriel Valley, which is the eastern portion of Los Angeles County. Her district is comprised of the cities of Alhambra, Azusa, Arcadia, Baldwin Park, Covina, El Monte, Industry, Irwindale, La Puente, Monterey Park, San Gabriel, Rosemead, South El Monte, Temple City, and West Covina. She is very, very busy, as well as unincorporated communities of Avocado Heights, Charter Oak, Citrus, East Pasadena, East San Gabriel, Mayflower Village, North El Monte, South Monrovia Island, South San Gabriel, South San Jose Hills, Valinda. Oh my goodness.
Make it easier to say the city she doesn't.
I know. Vincent and West Puente Valley. She is the chair of the Senate Insurance Committee and a committee member of Energy Utilities, Communication, Health, Transportation, and Government Organization. She is also a Senate Select Committee member of the Governor's 2019 report, Wildfires and Climate Change, California Energy Future, the Social Determinants of Children's Well-Being, and Asian Pacific Island Affairs. She is a member of the Latino Legislative Caucus, Legislative Jewish Caucus, Los Angeles Caucus, San Gabriel Valley Caucus, and Legislative Women's Caucus. Again, very busy. Tonight, the City of Temple City would like to thank her for her support of Senate Bill number 324, which allows the Landscape and Lighting District of Temple City to perform maintenance and make improvements under the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972. If you'll notice, on the flowers, we also would like to present to you a key to the city. We want you to know that key welcomes you, and that you are always a friend of our community, and that we are so grateful to have someone representing us such as you. But it is the key to the city. Sorry, I'm just.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much. I really wasn't expecting this. I think this is my first key as senator, so thank you. Temple City, thank you so much. So, if this opens any of your houses, let me know, because I also want to go in there as well, but.
We all have rings, so we
Yes.
don't.
What an honor. Thank you. When you set out to do this work, you really don't necessarily expect you're going to get a key or some beautiful flowers, but I'm just so appreciative that you have also been, partners in this endeavor, because it takes cooperation. I've talked to the city manager when I asked what their needs were. They were very responsive and told me what the community needed. And so I think it's always a back and forth, not just my work, but your work as elected leaders. And of course, the community should also be thankful that who they have, because they've been working really hard to make sure that they engage my office to ensure that we bring resources. So whatever I do it really wholeheartedly, but this is really just an added bonus. Thank you for the flowers, thank you for the keys, and thank you everyone for allowing me to come and say hello tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to give you a recognition also.
Thank
But the
you.
flowers, we know the flowers. The flowers are much better.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know, I think it's too hard to maneuver.
Yeah, it's too small.
Okay. Thank you, Senator, for coming. Okay, I have a couple of more people who would like to speak under public comments. I have Steve Stafford.
Mayor Fish, Mayor Pro Tem Chavez, council members, and city staff. I have a map here that's of Temple City. It's about 8 years old. There are numerous streets missing. There are people that want to get these maps made. There's been people asking why we don't update this map. There are new tracks that are not even on here. There's some tracks that are part of a street that aren't on there. And if we're gonna use this, when people go to reproduce it, or the chamber does, or anybody, this is gonna need to be updated. And I'd like to see it updated to facilitate a new map for the city that the people can have. Doesn't do any good. I got this today, and it doesn't do any good when streets are missing. And I just like to see it happen as soon as possible. Probably won't cost that much, because the County Department of Engineering can produce this. And what you gotta do is make sure that they put the updated streets in there with their names. And I wanna wish all of you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Okay, we have Ken Wu from Temple City Adult School.
Hi, City Council. Hi, my name is Ken Wu. I work for Temple City Adult School. We'd like to reintroduce us. We just opened our doors again. We just got PAC just realigned us that we're now opening for business since May. So we're relatively new. We just want to reach out to you guys to let you know that what we do. So we serve primarily everyone around here is Temple City, San Gabriel, Monterey Park, Alhambra. So we serve the adults with barriers usually, So a lot of our students are newly immigrants that came from here, and then they're having a hard time learning English. So really helping them with that. So education is our first and foremost. Our second part is now we're integrated with everything else that California demands us to do. That we're also providing career technical trainings to placement for limited job. But the difference that what we're doing is that we're making sure that we have an employer first. So we so far have 2 employers that's with us. One of them is 99 Ranch in all 20 supermarkets. They're here. They go through they're working with us for a regular job you can look for, and then we also provide with them career training. So they're looking for fish cutters, bread makers, and meat cutters. So we provide that kind of training with them. That any students that come in and they want that, and then they can take the class knowing that the moment that they exit, that 99 Ranch will interview you and you will have a job. So we're working with that. Also, Franklin inspections. which deal with ultrasonic inspections, a little more vigorous. But then in every case, every single thing we provide here is making sure that our community and within locally that they have a job after they go through us. We're not gonna provide any classes that doesn't have an employer. It doesn't make sense. So within that, we're really trying to reach out to you guys to please let us help our community. So if they don't know about us, so they wouldn't be able to reach us. And a lot of the Asian community sometimes are not, they're not aware of everything that is going on. So with, parking wrecks, and please, recognize us, like, let hold events at our place, because we do service more than just those two. We also do case managements. That means that we work, there's a lot of immigrants that come here with just parenting status, that they need medical help, and we fill out the application for them. They need CalFresh. So we deal with that as well. So we do also deal with caseworking. We don't just leave you there, we navigate through you, so making sure that you get all the help that you can get. So we are really trying to serve our population, including homeless, and then we do work with all the Methodist church around here. And we have to get approval from the post office, because we realize that one of the interesting barriers that's coming through is that they only for Department of Rehab. So a lot of homeless, we understand that they do come with disabilities. We want to give them a storage, like a place to have their items, but Department of Rehab will not give them any services unless they have a PO box. So we want to provide that as well. But then with that, we have to talk to the U.S. Post Office, and we're trying to get everything going on. So we're like more than just really a adult school. We're really trying to be like what it was when it was built, intended to do. We try to be like a pillar in the community that serves non-seculars. Because a lot of the adults, when they first come here to America and learning everything, they go to the churches. That's where you get all your events. But what if you don't? What if you don't go to church? There's a lot of us now are more non-secular, coming from China, coming from Hong Kong, and we hope to be that place where we can educate you and make you understand the community, and really protect you from all possible things. That we come here, you aspire to find a job, but how do we know that you're not going to get tricked or scammed into things that you're not aware of? So we're trying to provide the correct information to them. As we know, a lot of them are given the wrong information, and they're more living out of fear than really understanding that what we really are. So please, city hall, let us use us, utilize us. We get state funding too, limited as it may be, but your population, your community is.
Can you make sure our city manager has your contact information?
Oh, okay.
Just so that, if we have any questions or anything.
Sure.
Because I have some questions maybe. Or if you have any flyers or anything, or.
Yes,
Okay?
Yeah, this is our first time.
All right, no problem.
Thank you so
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comments. Move on to consent calendar. All consent calendar items may be
Motion
approved.
to approve.
Second?
Okay, moving on to item 8, public hearing, none. Unfinished business, none.
I'm sorry, we actually have 4 resolutions, so we just need to at least have a voice vote on that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, can I get a roll call, please, on the consent calendar?
Yes. Councilmember Mann?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez? Mayor Fish?
Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10, new business. Adoption of resolution number 195441, providing for the appointment of the nominees to the office of city council that were to be elected on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, and canceling the city's general municipal election on that date.
Mayor Fish, members of the council, your election official, the city clerk, will provide a very brief overview.
Tonight is relating to the March 3rd, 2020 general municipal election. At the close of nomination period on Friday, December 6th, the clerk's office qualified 3 nominees for 3 council member seats. Under California Election Code 10229, if by the nomination filing deadline, the number of persons who have been nominated for those offices does not exceed the number to be filled for that election, and if there are no qualified ballot measure, then the city's election official shall submit a certificate of these facts to the governing body of the city and request the governing body at a regular or special meeting held before the municipal election to adopt one of the following courses of action. One is to appoint to the office the person or persons who have been nominated. Two, appoint to the office any eligible voter if no one has been nominated. Or three, determine to hold the election if either no one or only one person has been nominated. Action 2 and 3 is not applicable in our situation. City Council's decision must occur by the 75th day before the municipal election, which is December 19th. Otherwise, if no person has been appointed to the office pursuant to actions 1 or 2, the municipal election shall be held. Tonight, City Council is requested to adopt Resolution 19-5441 and exercise its option to appoint the nominees to those offices and to cancel the March 3rd, 2020 general municipal election. We expect to save the city a little under $90,000 with the cancellation of the March election. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any council comments? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open public comments. Close public comments.
Can I just wanted, I didn't get in.
Well, I'm good. Now we're
Oh,
council,
okay.
again, back to
Okay.
council questions and comments. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean.
Oh, I wanted to congratulate my colleagues on the opportunity to be reappointed. I'm very appreciative of the chance to serve the community for another 4 years, as I know both of you are. I think it's wonderful that we're going to save the city so much, but more than that, I just want to thank the community for the trust that you again have put into having the three of us serve. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, Mayor Fish. Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Sternquist. It was a pleasant surprise for
Yes, it was.
myself being, I mean, we're about to finish our first term, or I should say Mayor Fish and I. And so I don't think I had this expectation that we're gonna run uncontested and be appointed. I mean, we know a lot of colleagues from other cities, and almost everyone I know is having an election or a contest of some sort. So I am also very appreciative of the level of trust our community has given to us. The last 5 years has been quite a ride, quite a journey. We talked about different chapters. I think this certainly is another chapter. It's the commitment that we pledge to honor and serve our community for that duration is something I've always taken seriously since day one. So I'm honored to continue that journey with everyone here on the dais. Thank you.
And I would just like to say also that I appreciate the confidence that our residents have in us. I would like to also say that these last 5 years, you know, there is a learning process, and for William and I, we were very fortunate to come onto this council with 3 seasoned council members who have shown us great leadership. It's just, you know, it's amazing to come up here and know that you can ask questions, that no question is too dumb, because there's a lot of information thrown at us in a very small amount of time. From the minute that you are elected, even before you're sworn in, you have people asking you questions just about everything that has to do with the city. So again, I would just like to thank everybody, thank my colleagues for their leadership, and to another 4 years. So thank you. I will go ahead and entertain a motion.
Mayor Fish, I would make a motion that we adopt Resolution 19-5441, providing for the appointment of the 3 nominees to the office of City Council that were to be elected on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, and canceling the city's general municipal election on that date.
Second.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mann?
Yes?
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Fish?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item B, downtown parking strategic plan update.
Mayor Fish, members of the council, will give staff a little bit of time. But as outlined in your staff report, we've gone through an extensive exercise, and a good amount of time has passed since we've gone through working with Transpo to look at the downtown parking opportunities and issues that we have in the area. With that, some of the findings, this was shown to the standing committee as well, and Councilmember Yu and Mann several months ago. So we bring these findings to you. You do have the opportunity to give us some direction as well. Any of the longer term implementation measures, there is as part of the motion is a appropriation, but if you want some more time to absorb that and get through that, that is fine as well. But with that, I'll let Ms. Tinny Chan, one of our management analysts out of the Management Services Office, to give you the introduction to the presentation and going forward.
Good evening, Mayor Fish and members of the City Council. The item before you provides findings of the recently completed Downtown Parking Strategic Plan Update. A summary of those findings, along with recommendations, will be presented by Dan McKinney of Transpo Group USA Incorporated. In addition to staff's recommendation to approve the Downtown Parking Strategic Plan Update, staff is also requesting 4 additional considerations shown here, which would allow immediate implementation of the plan's recommendations, as well as a follow-up report by the city manager on a longer-term implementation program. With that said, I'm happy to introduce you to Dan McKinney.
Great. Good evening. My name is Dan McKinney, as Tindy just mentioned.
Good evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me, council members, mayor, city staff. So I'm a principal and owner of a firm called the Transpo Group. We specialize in transportation planning and traffic engineering and focus a lot on parking studies is what I do. I've been there over 20 years and I've been doing a lot of these studies throughout the region and actually the world. Been traveling quite a bit doing these parking studies. So happy to kind of present this stuff to you, and as you have questions, look forward to talking to you more about it. So really the first slide here is to talk about the general overview of what I'm going to talk to you about today. Give you a little bit of background, talk about the process that we went through, give you a little feedback on what we found for existing conditions. We did some surveys and public outreach. I want to talk to you about that. We also did a parking demand model looking at future projections on parking demand for changes of use, and then talk about some of the strategies and implementation in terms of next steps. So in terms of the background, back in November 2012, the city's downtown strategic plan was adopted, and it had a lot of focus on land use changes and parking and so forth. So with that, I think in 2015, the city really started seeing some shifts in land uses, specifically in downtown, retail shifting to restaurant type uses, which created a different type of demand, different peaking effect for parking and traffic. And so out of that, at the council level, I think in 2017, it was decided to really kick off this process and dive into this further. So this is where we're at. And for that process, we went through and met with the city, had a kickoff meeting, identified what our scope of work was going to be, where we were going to study, what the city saw as the issues, and really started the process of evaluating existing conditions. After we understood existing conditions, we went into a dive into figuring out what is it like in the future if these land uses continue to change as we're anticipating. And then develop some management strategies. Parking is a pretty valuable asset for any city, and so really it's important that we start thinking about that as an asset just like you do any other public asset to manage it. And then talk about some implementation strategies for near term and long term. So this slide identifies the study area that we evaluated, and really it gets into, it's bounded by Kaufman and Cloverleigh to the east and west, and Woodruff and Workman, really all the areas around downtown surrounding Las Tunas and where your more established retail and restaurant areas are. In that study area, we had 620 on-street parking spaces as well as 523 off-street spaces, so almost 1,200 spaces that we evaluated in that downtown area. This map also identifies all of the restrictions or parking regulations, whether it's 2 hour, whether it's free, and so forth. So with that, we started diving into and collecting data on multiple days to evaluate what is the parking conditions during the weekday as well as the Saturday condition. This quick graph is dividing up the on-street from the off-street, because I think what we found is that the on-street actually was more open or more available than the off-street. I think off-street parking was identified as being pretty popular, being really closely related to the back doors of the restaurants and retail areas. But what we also identified as peaking conditions were occurring midday, right around the lunch period or 1 o'clock, reflecting a lot of the restaurant uses, people coming for lunch and so forth in the downtown area. Well, one thing I'll also mention is we look at that, we started to dive into the specific areas a little more carefully or a little more detailed. So overall, I think this identifies that parking is available in the downtown area with utilization. Typically, we like to say 85% is at the point at which parking tends to start feeling full. Even though there's 15% parking still available, that's kind of the point at when people start having a little bit more difficulty finding parking and navigating around. Having a little trouble with my, oh, there it goes. So looking at it in more detail, obviously overall there's enough parking, but what we're finding is that there's some hot spots or some areas that are more in higher demand. This figure represents the weekday condition, and on the weekday condition, the overall occupancy of the area is 52%. So ample amount of parking in the area overall, but when you start looking at some of the areas in red, which are the off-street lots, kind of the alleys just behind Las Tunas, those are where a lot of the busy and most desirable parking is at. And when I look at the Saturday condition, occupancies start creeping up a little bit higher. We're in the 64% range in the Saturday condition. And you can see that the red areas are where what I'll call is our hot spots, or where the demand is a little bit higher. We did some public outreach and met with some of the business owners. City staff as well as we were involved in different outreach parts of doing that and finding out what were their concerns, what were their conditions. We also did some surveys. This identifies some intercept surveys that we did along Las Tunas, trying to capture some data from both customers as well as employees. From that, we found some information out related to different conditions that we would kind of tend to expect. I think on the weekday kind of scenario, more people were driving alone, and on the weekend, more people were carpooling, kind of reflecting more family-oriented activities that were happening on weekend. Also, some of the studies identified that, we asked if people were easy to park, how did they get there, were they driving alone, were they ride sharing, and find out if they were parking on street or off street. So as we gathered some of that information, we then started focusing and created a parking demand model. So we actually evaluated and gathered all of the land use information from the downtown area to identify what types of land uses were in the area, and aggregated that information along with the parking demands that we actually captured out there. With that, we worked with the city to identify what is the probable likelihood of different changes in land use that we could evaluate. And so one of the scenarios that was studied in the report was to basically convert, I'm going to round, about approximately 100,000 square feet of retail space into restaurant space, and what would happen in the downtown area if we did that over time. And so from that, these two slides kind of represent where we would anticipate the intensity of demand being created by that. And so this is the weekday condition. And then the next one is the Saturday condition. And so on this, what you'll see is that there's a number of areas that exceed occupancy of specific lots. This is a model that we evaluated that does not, what am I trying to say? What we did is that we did not adjust people's behaviors from existing conditions. So based upon how people arrive and drive and park today, we assimilated that with this on top of that. So when we did that, we're going to show that parking spaces, or the desire to park in certain areas, exceeds that 100%. Now, in reality, that wouldn't happen because you can't do that. So people would start spreading out. But this is just
Dan, could you also repeat that this model based on adding
bunch of restaurant spaces again, right?
Correct.
What's that?
It's
How
com-
much are
it's-
you
It's
adding?
more converting, it's more increasing 100, yeah, it's converting retail to restaurants, so it's a delta.
Right,
Looking at a
right.
delta of that,
But
correct.
But that's an assumption that you use for this.
That's
model.
correct, that's
Right,
correct.
So
we-
this is, yeah.
So we have that model developed for the city's use, and that if, in the desire to look at different scenarios, like let's say you have a new land use change that's going to occur that you would want to evaluate a little bit carefully, we could use that model to do that in the future. So overall, I think parking occupancies are, still available, but there's definitely a need to manage and regulate and start adjusting where people park, and possibly requiring some people to walk further than being right adjacent to their the desired destination. So from that, we started really identifying in the report a variety of different management strategies to basically get the available parking, or to get the demand to utilize what's available out in the area. So the first strategy is really to establish a monitoring program and identify actions from that. So as you make and implement different changes, you're going to expect that demand and the desired location of people's parking habits will change. And so as that changes, you want to kind of keep on top of that and adjust as you go. Because parking's one of those things you can't just come in and just, okay, we're going to do this and it's going to fix it all. It's going to be an evolution or a progression where you implement a few things at a time. You'll start seeing some shifts and adjustments, and you will reflect that over time. One of those things that we were recommending too is to really look at that in lieu parking fee a little bit more carefully too, that the city and I were working on. So that's one of the next steps that we'll talk about later as well.
Can I ask you a question about the in lieu?
Yes.
For some reason, I recall that we don't do in lieu parking, so I'm confused here.
So I can probably step in on this. Some years ago, the city had an in lieu fee program that was the manner in which it was sort of being administered. My predecessor, Mr. Vail, felt was not appropriate for the city for a variety of reasons. We've done some parking agreements, but I believe what's being considered here is an in lieu fee that's specifically tied to the studies that would be done, which I would check with Mr. Vail on his concerns about the previous fee, but I believe this fee would be administered in a way that our office would find perfectly acceptable.
And I thought there was some concern about even just using the term with Mr. Vail in lieu for some reason.
There was, and I would really need to go back and walk through that with him, but as I say, when it's based on a substantive study, as is being discussed right now, you're in kind of a different zone. So
Okay.
yeah.
So maybe it's just the terminology, I think, has changed,
That
possibly.
that could be so, yes, ma'am.
That made it, I guess because you can have in lieu of anything.
Yes,
And that was what was trying to be prevented.
correct.
And then just another question before you proceed. I know that in the 2017 study that the shift to restaurants, I mean, pretty much that has stayed the same. So that is, do we have the analysis of what has changed since 2017? Since in 2017, I remember that was like the big thing was that the restaurants, and now I'm hearing that again. So I'm wondering going forward, what has really changed in 2 years? Because I don't know, I kind of feel like we're in the same place, hearing the same thing that, in certain days on Las Tunas, there really is enough parking. It's just people choose to want to park right in front of the 99-cent store, or, in front of, we don't have an ice cream store, but in front of the liquor store or what have you. So what difference is there from 2017 to now that you've discovered?
Yeah, I don't know if I have all of that data and information regarded to what land use changes have happened. I mean, I'm sure the city could dive into that a little bit, but we really, when we started our study, we looked at the here and the now and like what is occurring and then looking forward. So we didn't go and look backwards so much. So I guess I couldn't tell
Well,
you
I
that.
guess my concern is just what, going forward to help with implementation. I mean, it's a cost of approximately $45,000.
Right.
If things haven't changed significantly, what are we gonna be implementing? I think the history really plays an essential part in going forward.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously you're gonna have land use changes that you've had, and that's changed. I don't think there's been a lot of parking changes, is my understanding. So we haven't managed parking or changed the way that you're managed parking. So some of the things that we're gonna be talking about through here is how do we implement things that get people to behave differently and not park right in front of the 99-cent store? So are there time limit restrictions? Are there incentives that we can get employees to park elsewhere? And I think that's really what we're talking about is like, moving forward, what can we put in place to really have that demand that does come, utilize the system a little bit differently and try to balance out the impact?
It's somewhat a what-if study. What if we have a development occur on Las Tunas, a mixed-use project, or a mixed-use project on Temple City Boulevard? That can play into this study?
You could do that. I think, I'm not sure I fully understand your question. Let me,
Well-
maybe I can try to answer it through
Yeah,
telling you.
I'm thinking, my question is more like going forward, I don't really know what the study is going to provide us that would be different from what we heard in 2017, because it seems to be that same theme that the restaurants are the driving force of parking. I know you have to update your parking study. I think it's prudent to do so, but I guess maybe if just staff could provide me with some of the 2017 information, you know, more than just the, this was the general, that parking is driven by the restaurants, because we know that.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think if you'll let me proceed on
Of
some of
course.
these strategies, I think the strategies are what we're really wanting to move forward with. It's not
Okay.
another study. So
Okay.
I think what we're gonna do, what, I guess the implementation phase that is presented and when we wanted to move forward with that, would talk about diving into these things a little bit deeper. Not studying so much necessarily, but looking into how do we do a in lieu parking fee, or can we do something that's gonna collect money for that so that you can implement new
Okay,
parking strategies.
that makes
And
sense
then,
to me.
and then I think I'll answer your question a little
Okay.
bit as we go through, and then I'll be more than happy to kind of keep, I don't forget that though, because I don't want to ignore it. I don't
No,
want
it
you to
just
think I'm
helps
ignoring it.
me in my mind by
Yeah.
looking at what we did
Right, so the imp-
previously to see
Yeah.
what makes sense going forward.
So, yeah, so I think moving forward, I think we really want to kick something off and do something. And that's
Okay.
really what we want to talk about doing. So it's like changing some parking regulations, collecting in lieu fees, creating an employee program, creating new signage and stuff. And I think I'll walk through that real quick right here.
Okay.
Could I maybe just, Mayor Fish,
Yes.
maybe to clear up your point, Councilmember Sternquist, I think part of what we started when we provided direction in 2017 to update the parking study, it was to update the one that was done back in 2012. So I think what's being presented now is the culmination of the study that started in
Got it,
2017.
okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
so it's been a bit drawn out, that period, so
Okay.
yeah, I don't think anything's necessarily changed from 2017 to 19, but that the study period was really done over a year ago. And so now we're kind
So now
of getting the
it's
final product of,
putting that information into place.
that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if Councilmember,
That
do you
makes
think that's
sense
an
to me.
accurate?
Yeah, that's
description?
accurate.
Okay.
Well, I don't think the impetus for actually doing this study was so much to see what historically what has evolved in the delta and why and how. What we wanted to know is that back in the 2012 study, it presented certain slides of the parking needs. We just want to make sure today that we have current information to make informed decisions about parking strategies.
So you mean 2017? then?
Right, right.
Okay.
And then this is kind of taken a little
Continue like
while to
that.
get to today.
So it's just been a process that's.
Yeah,
been
it's
long.
really
I
more of a
think-
process.
I think your issue is why it's taken so long to get to this
Probably.
point.
Right.
But that's kind of been explained in the report.
Got
that
it.
Other things, I guess, were put on the top of the pile first, and
Okay.
now we're finally getting around back to this. And in the best case scenario, this probably should have come back to us maybe a year ago, but it didn't, so here we are now.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so I think to build upon that, I think we'd really like to take a data-driven approach, like what's really happening out there, because parking is one of those sensitive subjects that every community I go into, I hear different complaints about parking, and the data may be exactly the same in different communities. It's just your experience from that. So if you live or work right next to the 99-cent store, you're gonna get a different experience than somebody that lives and works a block away. So we try to gather that data and present the data so that we have hard evidence and hard information that we can all point to and say, yeah, that makes sense. And then how are we going to, what are we gonna do about it? And then over time, you wanna revisit that. So if you did adjust and either change parking regulations or, like you were suggesting, what land uses have changed from that? What can we learn from that? So I think, that's all part of that process. And then from that, this is these steps that we're recommending that you move forward with to start managing the parking so that it doesn't feel like you have a problem.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So that second strategy, these are the kind of what we're calling the near-term strategies. So that second strategy is really to provide more short-term customer parking near Las Tunas. So some of the things that we were finding is that business owners and their employees were parking in areas that were close to Las Tunas and absorbing and utilizing some of the parking that would otherwise, ideally be preferred for customer base. And so if we can get some of those employees to move some different spots, that would be converting some of the all-day parking that's right next to Las Tunas to maybe a 2-hour spaces, so that some of the employees and people that are parking there for all day can maybe park a block away or a little bit further from some of the underutilized areas. So that's one of the strategies that we're talking about. Identify.
I'm sorry, just real quick, do you mind if I ask? Back in 2012, I remember, that was an issue at that time as well. And we had a lot of people come to the meetings and complain that they felt that they didn't want to walk to their location, that they felt unsafe for some reason, and we couldn't understand that. Or did anybody express to you, or did you even get into that with any of the people you spoke to about their feelings about parking a few blocks away rather than where they are now? I mean,
Yeah,
I think we're gonna get the same
Yeah.
pushback.
No, we
Do you-
did.
do you experience that as
And
well?
we experienced that in many communities. I think
Yeah.
just as, a city evolves and grows, I think this is my personal opinion, having a parking problem is usually a sign of good economic development. Things are
course.
happening and people want to be there. So that's sometimes a good sign. So when we have that, it's changing the dynamic of it. People are having to park further away, or they have to circulate a little bit more to find parking. So how do we make the customer and employee experience better? And how do we get them to utilize and find that parking so that it doesn't feel like it's a pain in the butt?
See, if I were a business in Temple City, I would prefer that the good closed parking spots are available for my customers.
Correct.
Rather than my employees. But at the same time, of course, you want to have happy employees as well. And we're not talking about, walking a mile to your location, so there's a
There is, and so I
medium
think,
point in there, I guess.
in our opinion, a safe walking area is important. The distance is important. I think that, if you're walking multiple blocks, that can be a bad, a poor experience. But if you can make that experience, if you're walking a block, if you can make that experience better, I think you're gonna end up utilizing that parking much more efficiently, and that's kind of the things that we're talking about in this slide, and we'll keep going about. So some of the newer lots that on Workman and Primrose, those lots are not utilized as much as they maybe could be, and so those are the lots that we really want to try to get people to utilize a little bit better. So what we're recommending is that we develop some maps. We heard it tonight about maps is a good way to communicate information. Identify that on your website. put some what we call as wayfinding signs. So it's just guidance signs for if you're on Los Tunis, you can see an arrow that says, hey, here's where your premier preferred parking is located at, and guide people to those areas. And then once we have people at those areas, we want to make sure they're connected to the destinations.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you take into consideration that we are considering moving the Primrose
Yes.
parking lot closer? Okay.
Yep, and I think that's going along with the development that's happening there, and yes, so we worked with the city on those aspects, exactly. And so with that, though, there's still connectivity issues, and that's this slide kind of identifies. How do we get people to and from those lots better? So how can we provide better pedestrian connections between those? And so that's what we heard. And so some of that has to do with the look and feel of the environment. You know, if you have a narrow, broken up sidewalk, that doesn't feel good. If you have a dirty alley with, you know, low visibility, that doesn't feel good. So some of those pictures are here. This is of the alleyway to the Workman that just, you guys are familiar with this area, so these photos aren't the best to see on the screen, but identify some of the areas that people, you know, typically walk through, some of those alleyways. So some of the recommendations is to really look at, you know, do you want to invest in improving the environment through these corridors or along the streetscape corridors? And so those are some of the things that we're recommending moving forward with in the
And will your
implementation
report
phase.
address those issues specifically and the cost of doing that as well?
Yes, correct.
Okay, because I know Pasadena has done a really good job of that, especially in the use of the alleys.
Yep.
I mean, all through Old Town, they're the old alleys that people now use as basically walkways
Correct.
to and from the different businesses. They're lit up, they're really nice. They're not what you would consider an alley where people throw their trash anymore.
Correct.
Which they used to do. But now, of course, as you mentioned, they're used more as a walkway and a thoroughfare for that.
Right, so the
I
more-
like that idea, but I think that can be very expensive, I would think, as well.
It can be, yes, yes, and I mean, obviously, just like anything, you can implement, you know, you can start simple, do, you know, small improvements and build up to it as you know, have more money and more desire to do that. And that's where, when you implement some of these changes, that's where that data comes into play. It's like, okay, did it really work or not? Did we just spend a bunch of money and nothing happened, or is something really happening out there? So we like to try to quantify that a bit. So that's regarding those exterior parking lots that are further away, trying to have more connectivity, more information about getting there and so forth. This next one is really about managing employee parking. So a lot of the information that when we had the business meetings, and I know, you know, Councilmember Mann, it was part of that, and actually went and talked to many of the business owners. A lot of them weren't aware of where the available parking was at, believe it or not. So that surprised us a little bit. So a little bit of outreach could be done, and communicating with them, and there's a number of ways that can be accomplished, and pretty inexpensively. Identifying, hey, here's where the available parking is at, here's where your employees aren't gonna get tickets and so forth. And monitor those changes to see if you can actually start to build a relationship with those business owners so that they can start finding better available parking. If that doesn't work, then we've got longer term strategies that I'll point to later that could get into permit programs and so forth, that I don't see the need to do that now, but that's just the next evolution of what you would do in the future. Which is identified here. So as we get into those long-term strategies, these aren't things that we're recommending that you do right away, but this is just something that you should be mindful of and aware of, that if, you know, you start having problems and the employees, maybe businesses are growing and they have more employees, then you start looking at implementing a permit program for those employees, where that they would have to register with the city and so forth. I put these in here because I know this is probably not something that city's ready to do right away, and every community I work in is always resistant to charge for parking, but it is the most effective thing that we see. And so I put it in here to educate you and just to talk about it, and to put it in there that when you start charging for parking, that is the best way to get people to change their behaviors and move around.
But only if you enforce it.
This is correct, and you are exactly,
That's part
that
of
is
the
very
problem, too,
true.
I
That
think.
is very true. If you do not enforce it, then you run into trouble. So we talk about that too, is evaluating the enforcement system and keeping up with that. That's all in that report. Number 6 is also, you know, it's expanding upon what we just talked about earlier with the alleyways. It's really looking at improving non-motorized facilities throughout the city and encouraging other modes. So can you get people to bike and walk, you know, when they don't need to drive? Sometimes you've probably seen in your community that somebody will park on one side of downtown and then they want to go to the next door and they drive instead of walking a block or two. So if that experience, you know, along your streetscapes, along the sidewalks is really vibrant and lively and feels great, people are going to walk. And so that's where I want you to keep thinking about that as you develop your city, implementing, you know, improvements that your city staff have been working on. Those help with the parking problems as well. And one thing I'll mention on the bottom of that, it said work with developers. Basically is, you know, as new developments come in, see what they're willing to do to make sure that they go through a process of implementing not only, you know, what requirements are within the city, but how can they implement improvements that you may have next door. Curb space management is another long-term one. This is where, you know, what do you do with the curb space? And this is one of the things that we work on a lot of communities now in developing areas. You should use it for parking, should use it for bus, transit lane, bike lanes. Uber and Lyft is very popular now. As your community grows, that may become a thing that you'll have to start thinking about and considering. Improving enforcement, we just talked about a little bit of that. And so from that, this is my last slide. I know I've been up here quite a while. So the implementation is the stuff that is really kind of moving forward what would we do. It's really take a deep dive into what would we do with those parking in lieu fees, you know, and includes what would we call them. What do other cities do? What should a fee be? What would you use that money for to implement and improve things? Changing the 2-hour parking, or changing some of the longer term parking to 2-hour parking to make sure that there is available short-term customer parking closer to Las Tunas, identifying wayfinding and guidance improvements, so the signage to these other areas, identifying enforcement strategies, so really taking a little bit of a deep dive into what's happening now with enforcement and how can we improve it and make it more efficient, as well as doing that employee outreach, making sure that we talk to the business owners and move forward with that. So with that, I'll wrap it up and have you guys answer any questions that you might have.
Mayor Fish, one other thing that's not on the slide that Transpo and Dan kind of illuminated for us too is that parking demand model, but also to the existing conditions, kind of pointed us, one of the questions we kind of asked was, you know, for some cities, do you build a parking structure? And what the study showed us is that there's not really, based on even the future demand, even if you agree with the assumption of what the future uses of the area would be, building a multi-level parking structure not necessary at this time. And you made that decision as well when you chose to do what you did with Primrose as well, based on some early information on the parking study as well. So while it's not on one of the slides, it's one of the important things that we were able to gain out of the study as well.
Well, my concern with that would be if our employees or our customers aren't going to walk 2 blocks from a parking space, they're not going to go 3 blocks and 3 flights up to park in a structure either.
True.
That's true. I'll add that the parking garage is usually the last place that fills up, the last place that people desire to go.
Brian, I have a question for you. Sure. Do we, I know in the past we've gotten several complaints about parking. I don't hear a lot of that anymore. Is that still quite an issue in the downtown area?
I would say it's still a challenge.
A challenge. Is it more, would you say, for the business owners and their employees or the residents?
Residents in the sense of the downtown area.
Well,
I don't really hear complaints from the residents about the downtown.
I guess it would be customers of the businesses.
We hear challenges about customers and employees still through the area occasionally. Don't hear anything. I haven't really received anything from residents before.
Okay.
So
well, I remember a few years ago there were some complaints of employees parking in front of the residential houses that are just adjacent to Las Tunas because they couldn't park in the parking lots.
That may well be true, but I haven't been hearing that complaint more recently. The more of the complaint is the as Dan is talking about with transpose, kind of where they're positioning their parking. Are they parking, near to the businesses, and is there enough turnover? Those kind of things is more of the challenge. It has been a little subdued in the last probably 6 to 9 months, I would agree, but it's still the challenge is still there.
Brian, does this only cover public streets parking? So for example, on Oak Avenue, where the post office is, you have the post office, which huge parking issue there. Across the street at the Postal Service, both Tom and I have continually heard about the parking situation that little school, leadership school, poses. So how do we work with the public streets there and the private businesses that are actually causing problems in these little square shopping malls? And you got the auto body shop right next door that has their own little tiny parking space, Fanny Flowers. That's not part of the study at all, is it?
No, I mean, we focus, the reason we focus on public parking is because that's what you guys can control and manage.
And it's just downtown, right?
Yes, it's
Correct.
just downtown.
Yeah.
But the same types of strategies could be utilized elsewhere if the city staff felt that there was a need to implement them elsewhere.
Can someone refresh my recollection as to how we're defining the downtown area? Is it, because based on the maps I'm looking at, it looks like it's 2 blocks on each side of Temple City Boulevard, is that right?
Well,
Or is it bigger than that?
Cloverleaf to Kaufman, yeah.
So it's 2 blocks east and west of
That's
Temple City
correct.
Boulevard.
As we kind of consider it as the downtown core.
Is there
And
any way
do we,
even though it's not.
has anybody, or we ever thought, and maybe not to change the subject, but it seems to me that the busier area of our city is not that area, but the Las Tunas and Rosemead section is, to me, that's where the bigger parking issues are, anyway. But that's obviously not within this study.
No, not
But is
the
is
exercise we went
Is
here.
that a future study, or is that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, and especially with what we hope to plan with the Kmart Shopping Center and everything else. I mean,
Because
they have parking lots, but.
Remember, we changed, prior to Brian coming, we changed, and Nan and William, we changed the parking on Las Tunas to 2-hour parking. And then there was the conflict between the escrow company and Betty's Restaurant that was next door, because one said, well, there really isn't consistency of the type of businesses on our street. So we did change to 2-hour parking, and that in itself presented some.
We changed only some of them.
Yeah, we didn't change it.
On her side, actually, we left the 2-hour parking alone. And then the end of the story was that Betty left. She closed her restaurant and left. And she actually came, remember, she actually came and asked for more short-term parking. Actually, we denied it,
And she left.
and she left.
I think I'm just a bit.
Well, I have a tendency to agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I mean, especially with Camellia Square
Yeah, that's the
and with
issues.
the plaza, that's a huge problem.
I think what Dan mentioned earlier, I think downtown core is where most of the lots that we own, the city owns, controls.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And so,
And those are privately
like
owned.
he mentioned, we can only control what we own, at least on the system of parking is
Okay.
the lots plus the street. So if we start talking about, say, we all know how bad the parking can get for the plazas, but a lot of it, like I think we've talked in passing, has to do with the owner of the plaza wanting to take measures to, say, like restripe, relane, or think of other strategies kind of similar to what Dan's presenting here, but then we cannot compel or force the owner to say, oh, you gotta do
Okay,
this, right?
that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think that's, I certainly agree. I think everyone here living here agrees that that's the
It
problem.
doesn't appear at this point that we're getting many complaints of spillage onto the streets from those two areas, I don't think. that-
Onto the residential
Yeah,
streets?
yeah.
Not like
I
we-
haven't heard
I'm not hearing much from,
I know there were some concerns when all that was being built. But
I
I
have-
don't mean to change the subject, that's kind of getting away from what we're here to talk about tonight, this is downtown parking. I'm just thinking, do we have that big of a problem in this so-called downtown parking where we really need to spend a lot of money
Seems like the
on this?
biggest problems are further.
I think the bulk of our issues are gonna occur elsewhere, but
I think the problem is relative. I think when we have a large parking issue like the ones in Camellia Square or the TJ Maxx Plaza, those seem much larger. But at the same time, I think for our due diligence as well as future planning, we cannot ignore some of the issues that we know exist in the downtown corridor. Like, I think what I appreciate about the study is that there are actionable items that we can consider, both short and long term. And I recall as recent as a year or two ago, before we built the parking lot on Workman and Temple City Boulevard, there had been, I recall there was, the businesses in that area had actually, they circulated a informal petition saying, we want the city to do something about this block. And after we built the lot, they actually wrote a letter back to us saying that they appreciated having that space that their employees can park in. So
is that lot being used? Do we have any numbers, or do we
The time
look at
study
it?
shows, since then, so this is the time and place study here showed where that's at. Anecdotal is not always
And
helpful.
that's considered part of this?
Yes, the
area
study
as well.
this was part of
And
it.
refresh my recollection, do we have the time parking there? as
Yes. No, we do not have time parking. There's
Okay.
hours of operation,
Right.
but there's not time parking.
No,
Okay.
no overnight, correct? That's
So-
just the-
No overnight.
That's the only restriction, though.
Correct.
So if you don't mind me jumping in real
No,
quick
no,
about some of the downtown area. A lot of this was driven to revitalize that area. And so I know there's a lot of land use changes that were occurred, and that's what drove us to come in there. If those land uses continue to occur, so if you want more revitalization in that downtown area, this is what we're recommending, that you start managing it. So you can continue to have the conditions that you have now, but if you want to encourage more businesses to come in, we would recommend managing it, start implementing these different things so that you could facilitate those
So does that come
revitalization.
first? Because to me, it's like the other way around.
It could
I mean,
be-
I don't,
I think
it's like, I
it's-
hear what you're saying, it's like, you gotta be prepared, if you want people to come and they wanna do business there, you gotta show that there's gonna be parking for
Yep.
them.
I
But at
think
the
it-
same time, if you don't have any businesses there, you can have all the parking in the world, it's not gonna do you any good.
Right, I think we're not saying add any more parking. We're saying basically that
Manage.
Change
your
how, manage how we
parking-
use it.
Yes, your parking is full
And I'm glad
right
you
in
say
the
that,
alley
because
areas.
we've been saying that for as long as I've been on council. We don't have a problem with parking, we have a problem where people wanna park.
Right.
Right,
That's really the bigger problem.
so that's
You know,
exactly,
we
that's
have
what a lot of us
sufficient
demand.
parking,
Yep,
it's just where they wanna park and how they do it.
correct.
Now, I have a real quick question, if you don't mind.
No.
So, my question is, at the end of this year that we propose, apparently this whole thing is gonna take about a year, because you're supposed to come back at the end of 2020 with recommendations, I guess, based on this. So my question is, at the end of next year, are we gonna have things implemented, or are we just gonna have another report telling us what we need to implement? Or is it gonna be a combination of both?
I think it would kind of be a combination of both.
So some of the things that are talked about so far that have been identified, for want of a better term, which I know former council members like to use, the low-hanging fruit. There are things that we can do now, and then see how those work. So at the end of the year, we will have some of these things have already been done, and then maybe the higher things, the bigger things will be points of action, because we're not gonna be able to accomplish all this in a year, obviously.
Generally, yes.
Okay.
But I can let staff kind of point to that as well.
Okay, so, I know Brian got up, did you want to say something, or? I'm just trying to figure out what we're being asked to do here. Or maybe you want a better term, what are we gonna be getting for our $49,400?
Good evening, council. What staff is recommending is that we move forward with the short-term implementation strategies, which are identified in the staff report, and that was on Dan's
Right,
presentation,
right.
which
Okay.
is the, looking at the in-lieu parking fee, looking at where we're going to consider changes to 2-hour parking, because that right now, the all-day parking seems to be a
But Brian, I don't mean to
problem.
interrupt you. We're not gonna implement those. You're going to see if those will work, and then it still has to come back for us to say, okay, let's go forward with it?
Oh, absolutely. In
Okay.
fact, we're gonna be doing a lot
Because I
of
guess that's my
the due
understanding, is the
diligence.
implementation word.
Right.
Okay, so.
So basically, if you implement this, we'll be coming back to you probably every other month with something new based on this plan.
Okay.
This is what we need to do.
This is what we wanna do, or, okay.
Right. And then our thinking is once, because this is gonna be a whole year-long education for council as well as staff to see what's going on out there. And then it will provide us basis, let's say in 2021, do we need to just now start considering, an employee permit program, parking permit program? How are we gonna address the long-term issues, or maybe the bigger capital improvements, for example, looking at beautification in some of the pedestrian areas? So right now, we're just getting our feet wet and doing the analysis and doing, like you said, the low-hanging
So we're gonna get a
fruit.
little bit more into the weeds as to what's gonna work, what we think is gonna work, try to, and then start with the implementation of those things at some point, and then keep moving forward, and what works, what doesn't work perhaps, right,
Well,
based on the recommendations of our experts and staff.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I remember that when we talked about employee parking, there was discussions with the school district at the time about even moving our employees across the street, because you weren't asking them to go very far, and then there was some cost, and then it was gonna be explored, and then 3 years have gone by, and we've never heard about that again. I think that's my concern, is when you say you're gonna come back in a month or every month, I'm happy to hear that, because then I feel like we're doing something. That what the study is helping us move forward and, figure out what's the best plan. But I think I just don't wanna be back in that place where we get a recommendation like, oh, let's explore parking across the street, and then nothing ever was, we never heard again anything from it.
Would you
And I'm of the same, I'm kind of the same view. Let's start doing some things, okay, based on, good analysis. But, because I don't want to come back in a year and say, okay, this is what you need to do.
Or two.
And, okay, well, let's do it. But I think, hopefully, the way I read this report, it's more than that. And we've kind of already been there. We've identified, as you have in your report, certain issues that we need to address, or we can address. And now we're gonna kind of take the next step and try to really implement those things, I guess. Is that?
You're absolutely correct,
All right.
Councilmember Chavez. And I will say that once council starts considering these items and looking at policy changes, yes, you're going to get some input from the business community, but I think that's a good thing. When we went out to the businesses, Councilmember Mann hit every business with Tinny, and they said that they would come, and they had concerns. And then when we actually had the meeting, four business owners showed up. And to us, it's like we did all this outreach, nobody came, but I think once actually, things start happening, I think you're gonna get a much more active response from the business community.
So in approving this, can we add to have maybe a quarterly report instead of waiting a year?
Oh, yes, I mean,
Or two,
staff
or-
can provide that to you.
Can we make sure that happens?
If that's, yes.
I mean, does that sound?
Mayor Fish, well, first of all, I agree with, if we were to do that, we need something more periodic and frequent than the annual.
Yes, absolutely.
My current concern right now is I'm not sure if I'm able to differentiate between what staff will be doing versus what Transpo will be doing, because the 49 grand that's being proposed is for the attached scope of services that's in the staff report. But without getting into the weeds of that, I'm currently looking at this as we have a completed study, similar in terms of presentation of information from the previous 2012 study. I'm kind of curious as to why, I mean, I don't want to discount anything Transpo is doing. I really appreciate what you do, but I don't see why we cannot implement that without Transpo for the time being. Like a lot of these things that's being brought up, such as things related to parking enforcement, changing the 2-hour thing. I feel like this report was intended to empower and allow our staff to really sort of carry the baton forward. So I'm a little puzzled as to what really I have the same concern as Councilmember Sternquist is we're continuing with studies after studies, but I'm more of the,
But we don't do.
can we just maybe just take some action and see what's gonna result of that.
And Mayor Fisher, may I just add something to the context? I think it will probably illustrates a little bit better. Councilmember Mann and I sat on the standing committee. And we've been kind of after this parking study for a long time. And actually, at the last meeting that we had, all we discussed was this report. We did not discuss any of the additional recommendation nor the additional fees. So
Which
actually,
report, the
2017
report?
no, as recent as September. We have not, the last meeting was September this year with the standing committee. We discussed this Transpo report, but we never actually discussed the $49,000 proposal, nor did we understand, at the time, our recommendation was bring this back, the report, because it's a wonderful report. I think it confirmed a lot of things that we thought. It confirmed that we still have enough parking, for example. And then the report pointed out a number of strategies. And we said, this is wonderful stuff. Let's share it with the full council and get directions.
Correct.
So, I mean, some of the current recommendations we have never discussed at the standing committee. That's why both Councilmember Mann and I were a little puzzled as to why this additional study and what is this. I mean, even though we were on the standing committee, we're in the same position as you. We're not a little sure of what this is going to accomplish.
Okay.
So it wasn't something that the standing committee had recommended.
Brian, do you want
back.
to explain?
So I want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Do you want to explain how it got to this point? I mean, how did it get to the point to spend the $49,400?
Councilmember Hughes, correct. Those portions didn't come to the standing committee. It was us kind of as staff moving ahead a little bit, and what maybe we can do is dial that back a tad, come back to the standing committee one more time, talked about some of what we can, and then internally review and talk, and then come back and say, okay, here's some of the lower hanging fruit that we can do in-house. Here's what we can do out-house. Explain that through to the council. Have the kind of walk that through together. We can do that through the standing committee first, and come back to the council with kind of a fully vetted recommendation, so that we can differentiate between what the study shows, what we can do in-house, and what will require services of a transpo in the future, and we can vet that through the standing committee and bring it back to the council.
Okay. Vince, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's what I was, well, we haven't come to that point, but yeah, that's actually what I was going to recommend is to, I mean, it's a great report. We'll receive and file it and then give us a little time to digest and because the next step I just wasn't very sure and wasn't very comfortable to vote on.
And my thing is, I would recommend, and it's not a matter of reinventing the wheel here, but, we already, on Exhibit A of the proposed agreement, there's a scope of services laid out very well of things, different tasks that are proposed. I would simply go through those tasks. There are a number of things that I see on this task that I think we've already discussed and can be handled in-house. Certainly, we all know the fact that our enforcement is a little bit lacking, and how we can do some things like that. And I mean, some of these things we've already talked about, I think, and if we can narrow that down a little bit, as Vince was saying, you know, or as city manager was talking about, is figure out, okay, what can we do in-house? What do we need some help on? Certainly there are some things in here that we probably do, but, yeah, I would recommend, I would feel a little better if this, since I hear that the standing committee has not really gotten to this point, maybe send it back to them, take another look at it and bring it back to council for further review. And
Okay, let me go ahead and open public comments, and then we'll get a motion. I'll open public comments. I do have one speaker form from Steve Stafford. Steve, did you want to talk? Steve, did you want to talk on this item?
Mayor Fish, Mayor Pro Temper, Chavez, council members. I've been listening to all this.
Just say council.
Yeah, just say city
One of the
council.
things that I've encountered is over there by the 99-cent store, you have a bunch of taekwondo places and judo places. And those people come in there and you can't find a place to park. It's like, it's impossible. And I don't know about maybe I don't know what to do there, but it's become a real nightmare over there. It's like, if I want to go to the 99-cent store, I'm not going to go to this one, I'll go to Arcadia because I can find a place to park.
Well, I don't know about that.
It's really bad over there, and they come in like at 4 o'clock, they come in there at 6 o'clock, they come in there on the weekends almost all day. And sometimes they just sit in the parking lot and don't move. And I don't think that's right. I think some time parking spaces over there would be wonderful because the parents there try to sit there for 2 or 3 hours while their kids are inside the judo place or the taekwondo place. And there needs to be some time spaces there to make it work better. The other thing is maybe redoing on Temple City Boulevard, north and south on the east side of Temple City Boulevard up to Woodruff, and making that uniform with the other parking lots might help the situation. The other thing is Wells Fargo has a parking attendant out there, and he tries to say you can't park there. My feeling was this was built when I was younger, growing up here, as public parking spots. How is it Wells Fargo can take over spaces? You know, and some of these other businesses are doing the same thing, and it's become very problematic. I think if a development wants to go in here near downtown, they gotta make sure that they do the in lieu fee for parking and be able to make sure they have the right parking. A lot of this went in, and it's more than the parking lots can handle. So we need to look at this and plan for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Any other public comments? I'm going to close public comments and additional council questions, comments.
I just want to say that I think what you said, William, was what I was trying to say all that time. I was trying to put it in a nice way, but I basically felt the same, that there's things that I felt that were from the previous study that could be implemented, and especially like the employee parking. I mean, what a great example if the city started to do it first, and we have our liaisons to the school district bring that subject up. We have a new superintendent. So, I mean, that might seem like a big thing, but it, to me, is a low-hanging fruit, because the city can set a good example here of how to make that happen with, you know, even a neighbor or business or something. But, yeah, I think the study is great, but going forward, I think there are things that we can do in-house. So I appreciate you saying that.
And Madam Mayor, may I just add to that? I think some of the things we discussed along the way was not more than just the city, perhaps partnering with the school district. We talk about low-hanging fruit being some of the churches. For example, during weekdays, their
Yes,
parking lots practically vacant. And we discussed along the way some of the low-hanging fruit perhaps will be able to partner with some of our churches and places like that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll
So,
entertain a
Mayor
motion.
Fish, if I can make a suggestion, so that your recommendation from based on our conversation would be recommendation number 1, and then strike the rest for now, and just the second recommendation would be to return to the standing committee, and then return to the council with a fully vetted discussion about what in-house activities we can do and where we would need the services of a transpo in the future, going forward.
Can I get a motion?
Before, may I just make
Yes.
one further comment? But I think that the study is wonderful, and I agree with a lot of things been said thus far. I think even though we did the study back in 2012, this new study really give us an informed, can help us make a lot of informed decisions. For example, number one, we don't have an actual parking issue in numbers. It's a matter of channeling folks, giving them, making it more attractive and managing the employee parking. I think this study really gave us a lot of good information that we can use. And then also it helps support our strategy currently at Primrose Park. For example, one of the questions that we would have asked ourselves was, should we develop the Primrose Park or should we make the entire thing parking? I think this helped answer that question. That is, there's still, under the current situation, enough parking there, at least during weekday. I mean, it's only like 30%, so moving it closer to closer to Las Tunas, definitely we made the right decision on the Primrose Park. So I would say that giving the us and the staff, the standing committee to work on it would be the good next move, and then we'd like to come back and make some more recommendation on some positive, and maybe then we can say, we definitely need a further help on some of the parking strategy. Then we can do so.
And I do think, in our downtown area, a lot of things have changed since 2012.
Definitely.
We're now going into 2020. A lot of the restaurants, we have more restaurants, we just have more traffic,
right,
more people. So, no, like I said, I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't around in 2012, so.
Yes.
Was the update in 2017?
Yes.
Yeah.
The update was-
It just have taken us a while to get back to present the results. Yeah.
Mayor Fish, may I also just add one other thing? And I didn't mean for my comments to kind of say we don't need transpo. That wasn't the point. I think, like Councilmember Yu, I concur. It's if we have sort of this actionable sequence of how we're going to proceed, then we could identify those needs in the future, right? I'm not comfortable with saying, yeah, let's move forward with that right now. But let's, in terms of, say, like actionable items, or, we're talking about what can be done in-house. Like, I'll just use one example because we actually did it. I mean, Ms. Tenny Chan was part of that outreach group where we went door to door to the businesses. And at least personally, what I got from that experience was, and I know Peter from the chamber tells us this all the time, is business owners their priority is focused on running their business. They don't really have time to go attend these meetings, go attend these outreach programs, even though we intend the best for them. But we got the best feedback, in my humble opinion, was when we went directly to them. Yeah. And so when we talk about things that we can do, I know, like, for example, in the past couple of years, we had this business visitation program going on where staff actually went out and interviewed businesses and asked them questions. So, I mean, we have sort of certain things already in place that doesn't directly address this specific issue, but have we thought about expanding on that, building on that, being more creative? I think what we heard from a lot of business owners was sometimes they just don't know who to talk to from the city. And then maybe it did help having like a council member there at that time to kind of say, hey, look, we're here to listen, we're here to reach out to you. But at the same time, we can't be at City Hall every single day fielding those type of inquiries. So when we're talking about employee outreach, we're thinking more of something a bit more in place, right? Because like when people call in, they know how to ask for permits. They know how to ask for other things that are kind of more everyday run-of-the-mill. But when it comes to parking-related issues and these policy-related questions, sometimes they just don't even know who to reach out to. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's identified here in the staff report, which I appreciate, but can we maybe get a bit more detail about how exactly would that be done? What would be the timetable for that? How do we define success, right? We have this parking study, but then when we start implementing measures and thinking about implementing, how are we going to measure whether or not those implementation measures are successful, right? Because otherwise, a year from implementing, say, employee parking or employee permit parking, whatever it may be, managing employee parking, well, how are we going to define that, right? A year later, we says, oh, well, anecdotally, we heard they used a lot. I don't think any of us are going to say, okay, well, great, pat ourselves on the back, right? We want to be able to kind of look at, and that's what I appreciate about the transport report is it's data driven. And so I think we did a lot of studies, but at the end of the day, in order for us to kind of hold ourselves accountable as a city, is we need a way to kind of measure that success. And at least to this day, I haven't really seen that being sort of outlined. How do we do that? So that would be my sort of maybe one of the big concerns I would have if we move forward as we move forward with this.
Okay.
When you went out and talked to these businesses, did you actually talk to the owners, or did you actually just talk to people who were working there?
They were not none of the owners were there unless they owned the businesses. Yeah.
No, what I'm trying to find out is that you keep referring to speaking with the owners and getting these owners to come, but they weren't really the owners you were speaking about. You were only maybe speaking to the managers or the employees who have really no say in the business itself other than just working there.
Actually, the manager does have a lot to say.
Well, he has a say so in opening the doors, but
no, but they have a lot of the managers that reached out to us regarding this issue were saying that, you know, what can we do, because they manage their employees obviously, so they say that they can have that discussion with their staff to maybe park further, but like before we built that parking lot on Workman and Temple City Boulevard, they said, well, we have nowhere to go.
Right.
And then after they opened it, they said, oh, okay, well, thank you. We at least now have an option to discuss. So I think the owners would care even less because they're just renting out the space to the businesses. It's the people that are directly affected are the ones who work there every day. The employees and the managers are the ones directly kind of handling and dealing with that day-to-day situation with their staff. So I would contend from that experience that being able to speak to the managers and the employees actually would probably have the greatest potential positive effect if we're able to do that.
So then perhaps in the future, when we write these reports, we should say staff will educate existing business managers and employees rather than business owners.
Yeah, well,
business owners, as you just said, don't really care.
Yeah, well,
Or
we could
don't,
talk.
and they're not here.
We could talk about the definitions.
so-
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying,
Technically, that's correct.
you know, we need to
Make it more
really,
clear.
yeah, who we're
make it
really
more clear.
talking to here.
Okay.
So,
Anyway, thank you, Mayor Fish.
Thank you.
So.
Did we have any additional comments?
Maybe put business owners and managers, because you might have.
And/or managers?
sounds to me like that's who we're talking to most of the time anyway. We're not talking to business owners. We're
But you
talking
might
to
have
the
someone
managers.
that
It just depends.
Maybe
is
one or
the
two.
owner and.
It depends on the business. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve the downtown parking strategic plan update, which identifies current and future parking conditions, recommends an implementation strategy that outlines future considerations for managing public parking, and that refer this matter back to the standing committee for further review and recommendations.
Second.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mann?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Fish?
Yes.
Thank you to Transpo and staff for all their work.
Thank you.
thus far and into the future.
Update from city manager.
Mayor Fish, members of the council, nothing, we had great lights on Temple City, a lot of stuff going on. We're close, end of the year, we put out a press release that talked about some of our end of the year activities in terms of street sweeping, parking enforcement, the issues around parking enforcement as well, a few other things, so that's out there for the community. We will be closed Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, Tuesday and Wednesday. So, and happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you. Update from city attorney.
No substantive update. Happy holidays to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Council reports regarding ad hocs or standing committee meetings.
Oh, we have an audit standing committee meeting, but that's coming up.
That's
Yeah, that's coming
We'll
this,
report that
double, yeah,
on.
you have one Friday.
Council items separate from city manager's regular agenda. Councilmember Sternquist.
Couple things, they're related somewhat. I don't think we've heard back regarding the LIFT program.
I was
And,
just thinking about that.
and, there was gonna be some investigation about the insurance and possibly going out to see if we could
It was
do
the,
something.
actually, something was coming down about, what was it?
The AB5 legislation
That was
has,
it.
has
That
created
was it.
some challenges in it, and even for some existing programs that are out there that we're still evaluating. We're returning back to the council. Staff had brought to you a quick summary of the legislation related to independent contractors, ADUs, and other that we're gonna be coming back to you in the second meeting in January.
And just AB5, as you'll remember, converts a lot of independent contractors into employees.
Independent contractor.
It's a bill that would, in a lot of ways, resolve our insurance issues with this contract, while at the same time potentially making it untenable for Lyft to offer the contract. So I know the city manager and staff are touching base with them, but we kind of need to see how Lyft is playing this out. There have been lawsuits against the bill, which won't be heard until after it's actually effective on January 1, but we are trying to figure that out before we move forward.
Okay.
And you know, that's pretty relevant because as we heard in the report, that was one of the recommendations with the downtown parking is that develop more lift
Right.
and those type of programs.
So if we could just have periodic updates so that we know it's still in the works and hasn't fallen through the cracks. But with that, I use the El Monte bus station once a month to go down to the SCAG meeting, and I take the Silver Line or Silver Streak. But I didn't realize until recently that Metro partnered with a company called Via to do on-demand rides, which are currently free.
Well, remember we had the gentleman come to
Yes.
the meeting, but it's very limited.
But I just wanted to remind people that Temple City does have a pretty good chunk of areas that they can get a ride to the bus station.
It's mostly our southern boundaries.
Yes, and it's kind of near the El Monte.
It's near the El
border.
Monte station.
But the download app there is a Via app, and when you go onto the app, you can put in your address, and it'll actually tell you whether or not you're in the boundary if you don't want to take a look and try and, decipher the map. But, I just had it here. But the rides are available Monday through Friday from 6 to 8, and if you're in that zone, it works just like Lyft or Uber. You call you can either call or use your app, and you can get picked up at your home, taken to the bus station. When you get back to the bus station, it will drop you back
Yeah, I don't
home.
think it's to the bus station. I think it's to the metro station.
Well, it's
When
the El Monte.
No, it's El Monte, but it's not the bus station. They have, Metro has their separate station that stops on, it's near off
So
of
they'll take you
Valley.
to a bus?
They'll take you to the Metro, you're talking about the train, right? You take the Metro line train downtown.
No, I take the bus.
Oh, you take the bus. Oh, I
The
thought you were talking about
bus.
the train.
So-
Because the Via was for the train as well, so.
I didn't,
Okay.
I'm
All
not
right,
sure
so
about the train,
maybe it's a
but,
separate program.
because I don't take the train, but,
Yeah.
but this one in particular is to El Monte Station so that you can take
Okay,
a
yeah,
bus
yeah.
to downtown LA and then come back.
That's the one that the youth committee took last year, I think, wasn't it,
Yes,
Peggy?
and it's free, so you can't beat that. The only time they charge you if you cancel or they come and you're not there, it's $1.75, and I guess you use your tap card. But there is an app, and you just go on to VIA.com, and it'll give you all the information. But since we don't have Lyft right now, that might be a nice option for some people to be able to get a on-demand ride. So, other than
great.
that, just happy holidays to everyone, Merry Christmas, and all the other politically correct Hanukkah and things.
I just say
So,
happy holidays.
Happy holidays. That's it.
Councilmember Yu.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, today, during the consent calendar, we actually approved the lease, a waiver of a 60-day notice for the temporary library operations. So at our former chamber site. So perhaps will be good for either the library committee or the city managers to kind of update us perhaps on where we are with the new library and when the operation will move from the current site to a new site. So I'll be curious about that. That's one. And I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate my fellow council members for going on to the new terms, and looking forward to working with all three of you in the coming years.
Thank you.
All right, and lastly, happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Councilmember Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Fish. Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to our Parks and Rec Department for Lights on Temple City. It's always a great event. I always find it interesting that when we start the parade from Rouse, there's like not that many people on the street, and you're going, man, did everyone think it got canceled? And then as you get into the park, that's where like everyone is, because that's where all the
Very
stuff's
exciting.
happening. So it always scares me at the beginning, but then at the end, it's always kind of nice to see everyone gathered there. And this time around, it wasn't as cold as the previous years. I remember the last couple of years, it was always biting cold, and I'm out here with my big jacket, and I'm going, it doesn't feel cold at all. So I thought that was a nice change. And yeah, that's all I want to say. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Hope everyone gets some rest and avoid the flu, because I've been kind of battling that for the last 2 weeks. A lot of my staff and coworkers at the county are battling that. I know we're all coughing. We're all kind of, yeah, it's this weird strain that just kind of like lingers there.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to.
You didn't get your flu shot this year?
No, I did.
Oh, see, there you go.
That's the strange thing is I get the flu shot almost every year, like clockwork, but like this year has just been rough. I don't know why. I feel a lot better than last time.
Me
though.
too. Yes, I'm glad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Thank you. Again, as Councilmember Mann mentioned, the Lights on Temple City was another great event. The first time for our new Parks and Recreation Commissioner, Adam Matsumoto. So
Did a great job.
good job to him and his staff. I think this year's was a little different because it was cold, but everybody thought it was going to rain.
But
So I
we
think
had
that
the
kept
snow
it-
flurries, though.
Yeah, we had a little bit, but
Just
We did get the snow.
but yeah, that's what winter times are
The
should
snow
be.
machine.
So,
Mhm,
yeah,
that
the,
was
the
fun.
snow machine that was a
Was
new
fun.
thing. That was really nice.
Amazing.
Very nice, very
amazing.
nice. So look forward to many future events like that. And just to remind everybody, we have our final youth committee meeting on Thursday this
I'll be
week,
there.
and you're all invited to a dinner we're going to have afterwards, and get to meet some of the former members, and staff will be there, of course, and so it'll be a fun event. Hopefully you can make it. I believe it starts at 6 o'clock, Peggy? Yeah, 6 o'clock,
And
right
it's
here in,
it's here?
in the committee room, I mean, the
Community room.
community room, yeah. You know which one.
Over there next
I
door.
forget what we call it. Anyway, we always use it. Okay, and that's it. Happy holidays, everyone, and Happy New Year. We'll see you next year, right?
Yeah.
Next year. Thank you.
I just have a couple of things. Again, wonderful parade, wonderful event at the park. It was pretty exciting to turn on the Christmas tree, I have to say. That was great. And the addition of the snow was amazing. It just made it seem like it was really snowing in Temple City, which I think we got pretty close. It got pretty cold, but I thought it was great. I do believe it was one of the most successful lights on Temple City that I've seen. I did last night have the pleasure of going around and delivering our Holiday Home Contest winners.
Oh, wow.
Very exciting. We have some amazing residents that take a lot of time and are very creative. So that was so much fun. I got to meet a lot of people I hadn't met and congratulate them.
We're gonna get to meet them at the next meeting, correct?
They will.
With the pictures of the houses.
All of the winners are
Wonderful.
invited to the January 7th meeting. Their houses will be photographed and put, actually probably this week, be put online with their addresses, with their permission, so that you can drive by and look and see their houses.
Nice.
Then we did invite them to come on the 7th, where we will be honoring them, giving them a certificate of recognition. So we did pass out the lawn signs.
Do
They
they-
were very
so they got
excited.
them already?
They're very,
Oh,
they've got, they're
nice.
very excited. And this year we did do the addition of businesses. That was also very, very fun. They were very excited. So I hope we keep that up. That was good. And we did do it a little bit different this year. You did not have to enter. What Adam did was he quadrant off the entire city, and then we actually drove up and down every single street in Temple City.
Wow.
So it was
How
a
long
lot of
did that
fun,
take?
actually.
It was over
Well,
2
it
days.
took 2 days. It took 2 days to do
There were
it.
4 areas.
Four
and,
areas.
I did it Tuesday, and Nan and Cindy
it-
did it on Tuesday. They took an area, we took an area, and then Wednesday night, they took the other 2 areas. So, yeah, it was 2 nights of what, 2.5 hours each?
Right.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was really fun. We got to see a lot of houses, and like I said, some people come up with some really, really creative things. So that was really happy. It was nice. It was nice to see that people are getting in the spirit. So a lot of fun, and would like to, of course, wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will see everybody next year. We are adjourned. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm ready to go home.
Nobody.
Additional public comments? Of course.
He's waiting for us.
I'm sorry.
Can't stop coffee.
A few there.
I'd give you
Just a few, not that much, but
Take your time.
Madam Mayor and City Council and staff, we're not having an election in March, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been a vote, and that's a vote of confidence in what you've all done. With your staff, the commissions, everyone's doing a really good job, and I guess it really shows. And, there's a lot of events that we have, like Lights On, the Fall Festival, Moon Festival, big projects like the Primrose Park, the library. Those are all positive things, and I think people are seeing that, and no one's rushing up with some issue that they think, isn't being addressed. So I think everybody's doing a great job, and hope to see more of that next year. So Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Jim.
much.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we are adjourned. Thank you.